Why is Bitcoin better? It's better because the problem with storing billions of dollars in a building is the building can't run and the building can't hide, and everybody knows a rich person owns the building and therefore we're going to tax them. I mean, I just give you a simple question. I'm going to give you $1 billion right now. I'm going to drop you in Africa. What building in Africa are you going to buy in what country and hold for 100 years?
Yeah.
Like there is, not to disparage Africa, there's not a single piece of real estate in a single country in Africa that any of you would be wise to purchase if you had to hold it 100 years. On the other hand, if you held $1 billion worth of Bitcoin in Africa, you'd probably still have the money 100 years from now. And if you lost it, it's because you lost it, not because it was taken from you. Everybody walks past the biggest tower in the city, and they look up and they say, there's a person with more money than me. And then they think, why don't we tax them? What are they going to do, move the building? Right? You're not going to move the building. And so then they walk past the parking lot and they think, well, let's just go ahead and put a zoning restriction on that so you can't actually build on that parking lot. So at the end of the day, your property is getting rent controlled, expropriated, taxed, etc. And so it's the best idea in the 20th century.
Yeah, I think that's the important point.
But we're not in the 20th century. We're in the 21st century.
I wanted to get that point across because a lot of people think about real estate as somewhat unique real estate on the beach, on park, on Central Park, but it has those issues. I'd like to take the conversation to Bitcoin as a technology. Lightning rewards. Some time ago, you spoke about a Bitcoin Lightning reward mechanism out of MicroStrategies, which I thought was brilliant. Would you go there?
Well, I think Bitcoin layer 1 is all about creating monetary integrity and in the base layer, and it's meant to be a settlement network for high-powered money. So in essence, where you see it going is trillions and then hundreds of trillions of dollars in a network. It needs to be extremely robust. But the way you get robust is you create a block every 10 minutes and you put thousands of transactions every 10 minutes. So it's destined to move blocks of money, $10 million at a time, $100 million at a time. And for that, it's pretty good. You can imagine banks, corporations settling with each other at that speed. And if you want to move $1 billion from New York to Tokyo, spending $10 seems pretty cheap, and doing it in half an hour is not a big deal. But if you want to get to transactional applications, you can't do it on the base layer. There's two approaches. One approach is you change the base layer to give it higher throughput, but the problem with that is that you're changing the underlying scarcity parameters, which undermines the stability of the system and the integrity and the security of the system. So ultimately, you make the network more fragile. And so most things don't scale all at one layer. You scale in layers. Mm-hmm. So Lightning is the most famous of the layer 2s. And really, it's an example of an open protocol layer 2 system that sits on top of Bitcoin, and it's channel-based. So the idea is, if I want to move $10 back and forth 1 million times an hour, I probably don't need to put the entire $1 trillion network at risk. I could probably just set up a channel that had $5 million on this side or $5 million on this side, and I could move back and forth, and then I'll settle on the base layer as I open and close the channels. So the brilliance of that approach is you're still using Satoshis or underlying Bitcoin as gas. So you've got an ethical network and an economically sound network, but you've created an infinitely scalable network, because once you go to this channel approach, there's no reason why you can't clear millions of transactions a second. And so Lightning is the layer 2 to clear millions of transactions a second. The idea of Bitcoin rewards is if you want to give people small micro payments or very, very rapid payments for engagement, you show up to a meeting, you get rewarded with something of monetary value. You come. If I want to come to offer people a reward to come and register on my website, I do it using an open network that isn't subject to the constraints of the fiat credit system.
I do imagine that we're going to very quickly head to a world where everybody's got a digital wallet and is transacting in the same way we have a leather wallet in our pocket. And I love the vision that you had. Like if you show up for the HR meeting on time, you get a certain number of Satoshis. If you turn in your report on time, if you perform at this level, so you get what you incentivize. And the idea that this is an incentivization process. I keep on waiting for X to announce wallets and a incentive plan like that.
There's a profound statement made by J.P. Morgan 100 years ago. He said, gold is money, everything else is credit. And just like first principles,
at least back then.
Most people don't understand what money is. Money's a bearer instrument. Most people don't understand what credit is. Credit is when you have an IOU from a counterparty and they may or may not honor the IOU. So what we have today in the internet is you have a lot of profound applications that are digital transformation of information. We have figured out how to digitally transform photos and music and books and things like that. But we haven't implemented digital money. So whenever you pay anybody on the internet, you're paying with credit, not with money. And the problem with paying with credit is Visa, MasterCard, your bank, the correspondent bank, the central banks. There's a stack of 7 counterparties in between me and you. And that means that if I wanted to give you 50 cents, let's just say I want to move any amount of money around. If I want to move $1 around, every time I move it, there's a 30 to 60 day settlement delay, and there's a 2.5% fee. So when I move the money 40 times, it took 48 months. It takes 4 years to move the money from 40 people in the room. If you just started moving any amount of money, it would be 4 years before it finally settles, and all the money would be gone because it would be like 100% commission you would pay to the banks. So the problem with the credit networks are they're brittle, they're slow, they're expensive, and by the way, if you're an AI bot, you can't get a credit card. And if you're, so robots aren't people, AIs aren't people, but and I'm going to make fun of them because Bitcoin gives AIs in cyberspace sovereignty. If you want to release a service powered by an AI into the ether, outside the control of a person, a government, a company, you're going to need to finance it with money, digital money, which means Bitcoin. So AIs aren't people yet, and Bitcoin will give them sovereignty of sorts, but people aren't people because 6 billion people on the planet, they don't have credit. Like I dare you to try to send money to someone in Africa on Saturday, or try to cross borders. Try to send some money to someone in China, see how it works out, right? So, and by the way, that's the countries shut down at the border. But even within each country, most people, a lot of people don't have credit card. So Bitcoin is money. Everything else is credit. And you cannot build the 21st century cyber economy if you don't have money. Money needs to move at the speed of light. And lightning is an approach. There's a bunch of other approaches.
So, Bitcoin is the financial side of the internet that didn't exist in the 1990s. Right?
It's the profound big idea is Google, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, they made all their money based on the digital transformation of information apps, which are non-conservative. In the thermodynamic physical sense, they are non-conservative. I can give every one of you my music file. Whereas we're now moving into a new transition. I think it's a 30-year transition. It's digital energy. It's digital energy, digital money, digital capital, digital property. These are all just different words for things that are conservative in cyberspace. If I give you $1 billion, I have to lose it. I can't give everybody $1 billion, right? There has to be a conservation of energy or conservation of money here. And none of the great companies have been built on digital energy or digital monetary apps. But if you think about the next set of applications, the ones where I can take a block of $1 billion of capital in cyberspace and I can decompose it to 1 million smaller blocks, send it to 1 million different places in 1 hour, recompose it 3 hours later, chop it into a bunch of $10 segments, pull that back, oscillate it, program it, transfer it, or just store it for 50. How do you store money for 50 years? Right? And the metaphor I give you as an aeronautical engineer, which I think Elon would like and I think you'll like, is it's the difference between you launch something and it goes ballistic and comes back to Earth.
Suborbital versus orbital
And
velocity.
you launch it and it reaches escape velocity and it goes orbital. One is in space forever and the other's in space for a blink of an eye. And what we're trying to do is put energy in cyberspace or put money in cyberspace, reach escape velocity such that it lasts forever with zero friction.